The RMS Queen Mary sat permanently docked in Long Beach, towering like a steel giant frozen in time. At night, the ship felt less like a luxury ocean liner and more like a floating mausoleum, its empty corridors humming with a low vibration, as though the past still breathed inside its walls. Tourists came for the history, investigators came for the hauntings, but only a few ever dared to explore the lower levels after midnight, where the temperature dipped unnaturally and the lights flickered without apology. The legend most visitors whispered about was not of the engine rooms or the famous Door 13. It was of the bride, a spirit said to wander the Queen Mary forever in a torn wedding gown, drifting through corridors with footsteps no longer her own. The story began decades earlier, back when the Queen Mary was in her prime. Weddings had been held on board, extravagant ceremonies meant to symbolize new beginnings. But one bride never made it to hers. Some said she slipped while descending the service stairwell. Others insisted she was locked in by someone she trusted. The ship's records offered no clarity, only a brief note about an accident below deck. After that, crew members reported seeing a woman in white near the boiler room, crying softly but disappearing before they reached her. It became the ship's most persistent haunting. Now, the Queen Mary welcomed a new wave of nighttime tourists, each hoping to catch a glimpse of the bride. Among them was Daniel Reed, a documentary filmmaker with a fascination for real-life hauntings. He didn't believe most ghost stories, but he believed patterns, and this ship had more patterns than any he had ever researched. Reports from different decades described the same apparition, the same gown, the same behavior. Daniel boarded just before the last public tour ended. With permission to film overnight, he walked through the massive central hallway. The carpeting swallowed his footsteps, and old chandeliers swayed ever so slightly as though stirred by a breeze that wasn't there. He filmed everything, the walls, the staircases, even the shadows. The ship didn't feel empty, felt aware. At exactly 12:04 a.m., Daniel descended to the lower decks. His flashlight beam stretched across the rusted pipes and peeling paint. The Queen Mary was beautiful on the outside, but beneath the glamour was a darker truth, layers of history the public rarely saw. He paused at boiler room number 3, a place many stories had tied to the bride. Before stepping in, he checked his recorder. The red light flickered, signaling it was already struggling with interference. That wasn't unusual on old ships, but something about the timing made him uneasy. Inside, the air changed, not cold, heavy, like walking into a room where someone had cried for hours, and the emotion stuck to the walls. Daniel whispered into his camera. "This area has the most reported sightings. If the bride is real, this is where she appears." He took a few careful steps, then froze. Somewhere deeper inside the boiler room, a faint metal sound echoed, like a heel scraping against steel. Slow, dragging, deliberate. Daniel turned his camera toward the noise. "Hello?" he called gently. "If someone's down here, I'm just filming." The scraping stopped. Then softly, too soft for an ordinary voice, he heard humming. A woman's humming. It carried a sorrowful rhythm, like a lullaby forgotten by time. His breath caught. His pulse spiked. There were no speakers down here. No staff. No music. His camera flickered. The humming grew clearer. Daniel stepped back, keeping his light fixed ahead. "Who's there?" he whispered, voice trembling despite his attempt to sound professional. The humming shifted into broken whispers, indistinguishable at first, then forming faint words. "Still waiting. He promised. Don't leave me." Daniel swallowed hard. "Are you the bride?" The moment he spoke the question, the entire boiler room went silent. Not quiet, silent, as if the ship itself inhaled. Then the lights above him flickered violently, buzzing with a burst of electricity. His flashlight went out. Darkness swallowed him. In that pitch-black void, Daniel heard it again. Only this time it wasn't humming. It was footsteps, slow, approaching, dragging the long fabric of something heavy behind them. Daniel fumbled desperately for his flashlight. His fingers shook so hard he could barely find the switch. When he finally clicked it back on, the beam landed on the far end of the room. There, a figure stood, A woman. She wore what looked like a wedding gown, old and water-stained, the veil hanging loosely over her face. Her arms rested at her sides as though she had no strength left. The dress swayed, though the air was perfectly still. Daniel lifted the camera with trembling hands, whispering, "Oh my God!" The bride didn't walk toward him. She glided, each movement smooth, unnatural, soundless. The closer she came, the colder the air became, wrapping Daniel in a chilling heaviness. He backed away slowly, careful not to provoke anything. "I'm not here to disturb you," he whispered. "I'm just documenting, just trying to understand." But the bride didn't stop. When she was only a few feet away, she lifted her head. The veil shifted enough to reveal just the outline of her face. Not clear, but present, like a memory attempting to take shape. And when she raised her hand, Daniel felt a sharp sting of pressure in his chest, as though something old and grieving pressed its weight into him. Her whisper came again, fragile, breaking. "He left me." Daniel's breath shook. "Who left you?" The temperature dropped instantly. Her whisper sharpened, turning desperate. "He said he'd come back. But he never did." Daniel's instincts screamed to run. But the ship's shadows pressed around him, almost hurting him backward, toward the exit. The bride floated closer, her voice echoing now inside his mind more than in the room. "Don't leave me. Don't leave me too." Daniel stumbled into the hallway, nearly dropping his equipment. He slammed the door shut and backed away until his shoulders hit the opposite wall. His flashlight flickered repeatedly before stabilizing. He waited, listened. The humming returned, but now it came from the other side of the door, softer, quieter, fading as though she walked away. Only then did Daniel realize his hands were frozen around the camera. And the recording light was still on. Everything had been captured. The deeper the paranormal team explored the Queen Mary, the more they realized that the ship was not simply haunted. It was watching them. Every hallway felt colder when they walked through it. Every pipe groaned a little louder, and every fleck of light seemed to flicker just a second late, as if someone else controlled the rhythm. By the time they reached the forward decks, the air felt heavy. The team's historian, Daniel, flipped through old photographs under the beam of his flashlight. One picture in particular caught his eye, a wedding party posing on deck B sometime in the 1930s. He zoomed in on the bride and froze. Her expression wasn't joyful. It wasn't nervous. It was blank, as if she wasn't truly there. And behind her, barely visible, was a dark smear stretching up the wall like a shadow standing upright. Daniel lowered the photograph. "She's been here longer than we thought." A chime echoed through the corridor. A soft, metallic ring. It sounded like a bell attached to a bouquet, swinging gently. But nobody was holding flowers. Emily raised her recorder. "You hear that?" Before anyone could answer, a faint whisper drifted down the hallway. It sounded like a woman calling out for someone. Not screaming, not crying, just calling, gently, almost lovingly, as if searching for a groom who never arrived. They followed the voice toward the ship's abandoned first-class changing rooms. The walls were lined with cracked mirrors, each reflecting the team at strange angles. In one mirror, Emily noticed her own reflection was delayed by half a second. Another mirror showed only Daniel, though two more people stood beside him. The whispering grew stronger. Then the lights above them buzzed, flickered, and snapped off, leaving the room in absolute darkness. The team stood still, barely breathing. Then, slowly, soft footsteps began to circle them. Not heavy, not aggressive, more like the quiet glide of a woman in a long dress brushing across the floor. A dim glow formed at the far end of the room. At first it was shapeless, like mist. Then the outline sharpened. A veil, a gown, a faint shimmer of pearls. The ghost bride appeared with her head lowered, her hair falling like curtains of shadow over her face. Daniel whispered, "Don't look at her directly." But Emily turned her flashlight toward the apparition. The light hit the figure, and the bride lifted her head. Her face wasn't monstrous. It wasn't rotted or bloodied. It was worse. It was completely still. No movement in the eyes, no expression in the lips. Just a silent, expressionless stare frozen in time, as if death had interrupted her wedding procession and she never blinked again. She raised one hand, pointing toward the mirrors. Every reflection now showed something different. The ghost bride standing behind each member of the team, her face closer, clearer, colder. Her empty eyes locked on theirs through the glass. Emily stumbled back, and the bride vanished. Not fading, but snapping out like a candle blown by a sudden gust. Silence fell. Then, from the hallway behind them, they heard a man's voice whisper sharply, "Run!" They sprinted toward the upper decks, but as they passed the old engine room, the heavy door slammed shut by itself, trapping them inside. The entire room throbbed with heat. Steam hissed. Metal clanged as if someone were striking the pipes. Then they heard her again, the soft dragging of fabric across the floor, coming closer. The bride materialized at the top of the metal stairs, her gown trailing behind her like smoke. She didn't walk. She drifted, descending step by step without moving her feet. Daniel grabbed his camera, but when he looked through the viewfinder, she wasn't there. Only the empty stairs. Emily whispered shakily, "She doesn't want cameras. She wants witnesses." The bride reached the bottom step and tilted her head slowly, like she was studying them, deciding whether to lead them somewhere or trap them forever on the ship. Then the floor beneath them shuddered, as if the ship itself was waking up. A single overhead bulb flickered, glowing brighter and brighter until it burst. In the sudden flash, the bride vanished. The engine room door yanked open on its own, and the team ran until they reached the main deck. Cold ocean wind hit their faces. They didn't stop running until they reached the parking lot. But as Emily got into the van and shut the door, she heard a soft sound from the back seat. A bell. A wedding bell. Swinging gently. She turned slowly. Nothing was there. But on the foggy glass of the back window, fresh condensation spelled out a message, written by an unseen hand. You were invited. If this haunting tale sent chills through you, don't leave the ship just yet. Subscribe, turn on the bell, and stay with us for more terrifying stories, mysteries, and real-life hauntings from the darkest corners of America. More nightmares are waiting.